Liberty is freedom from the unjust control and cruel oppression of tyranny. That tyranny can be political, social, or private. Many flags represent liberty in many different ways, but some are greater than others. They are more relevant to modern struggles for liberty. They are more direct in their opposition to tyranny. In the modern age, few flags represent liberty as much as the pride flag does. Simply at face value, the pride flag represents the liberty of every gay and trans person to be who they are. If liberty means anything, it means freedom from unjust and unnecessary restriction. Restriction requires a great justification, expanding the liberty of another being the most common one. There is no good justification for restricting the liberty of gay and trans people in any unique or specific way. To do so is necessarily unjustified and tyrannical. To oppose such measures is necessarily to support liberty, both by defending the liberty of gay and trans people and by promoting the idea that the government needs a good reason to oppress. In its purest essence, the pride flag represents the freedom of every person on this earth to express their sexuality in any way they wish, so long as consent is involved. It must not be forgotten that it also represents the liberty of individuals who do not experience sexual attraction. It represents the liberty of people to escape oppression at the hands of the gender they were assigned at birth. The pride flag represents a desire for liberty from the cruel tyranny of conventional understandings of sexuality and gender. It represents freedom from the highly oppressive social norms associated with these two concepts. It represents opposition to oppressive and tyrannical social norms and expectations. It represents opposition to the immoral control and unjust restriction that tyranny of social, private, and political varieties imposes. It represents liberty. It represents people fighting tyranny to be their truest, freest, and happiest selves. Those with disdain for the flag are the advocates of tyranny and the enemies of liberty. Make no mistake, had they lived 50 years ago, many of these authoritarians would be at home amongst the tyrannical racists who condemned mixed-race relationships. These people do not care for liberty. If they cared for such a thing, they would acknowledge the massive immorality of tyrannical social standards associated with sexuality and gender. They would acknowledge how these disgusting tyrannical ideas crush the liberty of the individual. But they do not, and they will not, because they just don't care. Not even a little. The conservative is more than happy to LARP and virtue signal about liberty, but when it comes to actually advancing liberty, not only do they not support it, they will devote their lives to stopping it and maintaining a tyranny. They don't want people to be their freest, truest, and happiest selves, free from tyrannical social norms that oppress the individual and force them into a mold. They love the social mold, and they will do whatever they can to force you into it. They will happily enslave themselves to the social mold, and they want to enslave you too. Should that fail, they will, without a hint of empathy, subject you to all of the marginalization and hatred they can muster. They will strengthen and incite the social tyranny, and if given the chance, create a private and political tyranny to accompany it. But they will lose, because the desire for liberty is stronger than their desire for tyranny. LGBT rights are a necessary and desirable advancement of human liberty. In a world of LGBT acceptance, every single one of us is freer, as the oppressive weight of tyrannical social expectations is gradually lifted and liberty is expanded. To deny that the LGBT flag represents liberty is to confess that oneself is a supporter of tyranny. To those of us who care about human well-being, as any rational actor should, advancing LGBT rights is a moral imperative.